Okay, welcome back everyone to the Joy of Digital Painting. I'm Jason Fella and I'm glad you're here today. So today I'm going to be showing you a second way of painting tree bark. And today we're going to use actually a custom brush. I'm going to teach you how to make a really simple but effective custom brush so that you can make some awesome tree bark. So as you can see, I've set up our canvas. I've reused this background that we used for a grass painting video. And I put in a little basic image of a tree here. And then I've locked the transparent pixels so I don't have to worry about painting outside the lines. So the first thing that we're going to do is I've created a small canvas to create our custom brush. So as I mentioned previously, I usually create a 500 by 500 pixel canvas, which I've done. And I'm going to turn my brush all the way to black. Okay, we're on 100% flow at the moment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create this kind of tree barky kind of shape. And I'm going to make sure it's all colored in, something like that. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now we're going to go to select and then all. And then we're going to go up to edit and define brush preset. So I'm going to type in, I'm just going to name this bark test. Okay, and then you can see once you do that, your brush tip becomes that shape. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out because we don't need that anymore. And now we're going to go into the brush settings because this is really where the custom brushes kind of shine. So I'm going to pull that from my other monitor into this screen so we can see what I'm doing. So first thing that we always have to do is mess with the spacing. So we want to space it out enough that we can actually see the individual brush tips there, something like that. And then we're going to go to Shape Dynamics. And then I usually turn size jitter on, 20 or 30%, but you can do it whatever you want. That's just kind of what I put it on. For this, I usually turn the pen pressure off, but for some reason Photoshop lately has not been acknowledging that I want the pen pressure off, so I don't know if that's going to work. But minimum diameter, we're going to save that. Angle jitter, you could keep as is if you wanted, but I sometimes will change this from anywhere from 1 to 3%. So just to give it a little bit of, as you can see, it changes the angle just a little bit of the individual brush tips. Okay. Roundness jitter. We're going to talk about these other brush settings in a future lesson, but for now we can just keep roundness jitter the same. Then we're going to go into scattering. Okay, and I usually tick both axes, and I'm just going to put it up to some arbitrary amount, and I'm going to test it out in a couple minutes. So we'll put it at 143% for now. Count, I'm going to keep that at 1 for now. Again, I think I mentioned this in a previous video. If you turn the count up, that basically increases the density of the brush, so it creates more of the shapes that you're putting down. But in this case, we want a little bit more control, so I'm going to keep it at 1. Count jitter 0. And then the last thing we're going to go into, we're going to go into color dynamics in a few minutes, but actually I'm going to uncheck that for now. So I'm going to drag this back out over to my other monitor just for now so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to decrease my brush size. Okay, now you're going to be amazed at how quick and easy it is to create some pretty darn realistic looking tree bark. Oops, sorry about that. Forgot to turn off my email. Okay, actually let me do that now. Okay, so over here you can see that I've already kind of picked 3 colors ahead of time. I put this mid color is what I used to put down for the tree, so that's kind of just a really mid-rangy brown. But for this first step, I'm going to color pick that darker brown. You can see it's just a nice dark brown. And so again, I've got my transparent pixels selected, so I don't have to worry about going over the lines. And I'm just going to start painting. Watch this. Look at that. Just a few swipes of our brush and it's already, we're getting this cool looking texture. Look at that. That's awesome. Okay, there, that's it for the first step. Now for the second step, you could go back over this with your mid-rangy brown if you wanted, but I'm gonna throw you guys a little bit of a curveball. Let's say that we wanted to make this a little bit, give it a little bit more color to it, a little bit more depth, a little bit more realism. So for our first color, we can go ahead and use this mid-rangy brown, which was the color that we initially put down for the tree. But now I'm going to hit my X button. Okay. That allows me to go to my background color. Why isn't that changing? Oh, because it's the same. Sorry. Okay, so what I'm going to do, for my second color, I'm going to change this just a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit darker, a little bit more saturated, and I'm going to change the hue just a little bit. I'm going to shift it a little bit towards yellow. Okay, something like that. So now you can see that when I switch back and forth between my background and foreground color, it's not a huge difference, but it's enough of a difference that we're definitely going to be able to see that difference when we're painting, and it's just going to give it a nice, a lot more realism to it. So now I am going to turn on my color dynamics, and I usually turn, let me drag this back over so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to keep the foreground background jitter, I'm going to keep that way up high, like 70%, something like that. That way my two colors will flip-flop back and forth. It'll put one, then the other, one, then the other, but a little bit more of the whatever foreground color that I have selected. It'll put a little bit more of that down than it will the background color. And then I usually put like the hue jitter and the saturation jitter, 10%, something like that. Same with the brightness jitter. That's just personal preference. It depends on the project. It depends on what you're painting. You can kind of play around with that yourself and decide what you want. I'm going to go ahead and pull this back over to my other monitor. Now watch this. We're going to start painting. Something like this. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna partially cover up that black that we put down just for a second, because I just want to cover the canvas with. Okay. Oop, you know what? Okay, I missed a setting. Notice how I'm getting a lot of like greens and other colors and stuff in here. You could keep it if you want, but I actually made a mistake. I accidentally turned on the hue jitter. I do not want hue jitter. I'm going to turn that back down to 0%. We will use hue jitter, and I'll talk more about that in previous videos, but for now I don't want it. It's a little bit of a wild card. So I'm going to go over this again. Okay, something like that. Now, I'm going to go back to our dark color. Put that in. And then now I kind of want to blend, well, let's see. I'm going to go over this again. Okay. See, this is what I'm talking about. Just layering, just experiment with layering. That's really what it's all about. Let's see. Okay, something like that. Okay, look at that. See? And again, I could turn the flow down on this. In fact, I probably should do that. That would allow me to blend things a little bit easier. Because let's say I wanted to blend see this going towards the shadow color. I kind of want to blend that a little bit. Okay, something like that. I'm going to pick a nice bright color here just to finish things off a little bit. Okay, something like that. And you just kind of keep layering stuff and until it looks like you want it to look. Okay, so you can see we got some pretty nice looking texture there. See, look at that. Not bad. And then if you wanted to, you know, just because we've used a custom brush doesn't mean we have to use a custom brush for the whole thing. Actually, I'm just going to go over this left side a little more. I'm kind of envisioning that the sun is coming from, you know, one side, and that's why I've got the tree looking like that. Just for, you know, just for some contrast's sake. But now once you get this done, actually I'm going to turn off color dynamics for a bit. Okay, something like that. Okay, so you see, I'm just continuing to kind of play around, really. I had an idea of where I wanted to stop, but as I worked, I decided I wanted to keep going. And that's really what this process is all about. Let's see. Okay, something like that. So, as I mentioned, just because we've used a custom brush doesn't mean that we have to use only a custom brush. What I could do, now that I've kind of created the basic texture of the tree, I could come back in here with my regular hard round brush. You could stop right there if you wanted, and it would look, as you can see, looks pretty good. Or you could come back in here with your, with your dark brush and just add some cracks and crevices and that kind of thing. So I can kind of see where there's some texture that my previous strokes have kind of created. something like that. I'm just blending the dark and the light a little bit, giving it a little bit of a mid-tone here. So something like that. And again, I'm just kind of playing around here, but you can see that that's what this process is like. Sometimes you have an idea, okay, I'm going to do my custom brush, I'm going to create a nice simple scheme, and then you get in there and you start playing around, and you start playing around with your values, your colors, everything like that, and before you know it, things have kind of gone differently than you expected, but they still look great. I think this looks really good. I think this looks like a really darn decent tree trunk. And again, nothing I did was complex. It was all pretty easy. I just played around with my brush settings and my hues and values and everything, and that's it. So I hope you can see that this is another easy way of creating tree bark, and this could be done, as I mentioned before, this could be done if it's more in the mid-ground, a little bit farther away, or it could be done even if it's closer up. You just might have to spend a little bit more time on doing it if it's closer up and you want it to look really realistic. Now tomorrow, or when I do my next video, probably tomorrow, I'm going to show you one more technique that is very, very simple to do. It does require a specific Photoshop tool. So this lesson, as far as I know, will be specific to Photoshop because it's going to use something called the Layer Effects panel. And I don't think that any other painting programs have that, but I could be mistaken. But you might want to watch the video anyway, just in case you have a program that has a similar effect, because you may be able to replicate it somehow. And at the very least, it will get you thinking a different way about how to use your digital painting program and how to use your tools, because I have never actually seen a lesson that showed how to do tree bark like this. I kind of came up with this myself one time when I was doing a painting with a tree that was like really, really close up in the foreground, and I needed something to make it look realistic, and boy, I found it. So I will show that next time. Play around with this, and if you have any questions, again, let me know. You can email me at specterx@aol.com. I'll leave my email address at the end of this video. If you have any questions, let me know, comments, whatever, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.